Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zahn Academy. I'm Fran, Zahn's education manager, and today I have with me Jimmy Stegall, who is a CDT and the CEO of Here to Serve Dental. And his presentation today is 3D printing in the lab from basics to breakthroughs. So thank you, Jimmy, so much for joining us today.
My
I
pleasure.
want to
Thanks.
let Oh, I want to let
Sorry.
everybody know that Jimmy has prepared some poll questions for us, and we'd really love it if you would be interactive with us. I'm going to start launching a couple as soon as we begin. So please answer when they come up. And Jimmy also will save a little time at the end for Q&A. So if
All
you
right.
have any questions, please type them in at the bottom of your screen, and I'm going to turn this over to Jimmy.
Thanks, Fran. Good to be with you again. So let's talk about 3D printing. It's a big topic everywhere we go today, right? Everybody wants to know about what can we do and why should we do it? And I don't think I go in many labs anymore where I don't see at least one printer. It is, I think, still the fastest growing area, the biggest growing area in digital technology. Sorry, I see your poll, but I can't answer it. And models, this is where it all started, right? We all think about models as being the primary reason that we might want a printer when we were beginning. And I think it's important to understand, how it can help us. Right? We shouldn't arbitrarily say, "Hey, that looks cool. Let's get one of those." I think having something as a tool that makes things more efficient in the lab, that might provide you a more consistent quality, right? And the fact that our market has certainly changed, and the number of impressions that we receive are more and more digital, right? Which means we might need a model for some of those things. And then you start adding in the other capabilities, all the different prosthetic appliances, the splants, all those things. So the question becomes, do I need it, right? And how can I use it? If you look at the market, it's kind of crowded, right? If I were starting out new, it'd be kind of overwhelming. So I want to go through kind of a process to let's analyze that a little bit and think about that, how that applies to a lab. And so, the questions, become number one, first and foremost, which one do I buy? Right? Why and why? And, the things I look at or I would think about is, obviously it's got to be accurate. I don't want to print something that's not going to be right, but it's got to stay running too. So durability, reliability, and you got to be aware of the importance of training and integration, right? Who's going to train you, that kind of thing. You got to know what you want to print or what's available to print in the machine that you're thinking about. And of course, the cost of the machine itself. And as we all think about technology, right, we're always kind of hesitant to buy this certain shiny new thing because, if I buy it and the new one comes out next week, what am I going to do? So we're always got that fear of, oh, I don't want to get stuck with something that's, outdated right after I buy it. So let's talk about it. How do we choose? And my answer to that has always been, we got to know what we want to print first. Why do we want a printer? And not because I think it'll help us. No, what are my needs? If I am receiving a bunch of intraoral scans as impressions and I need a model to layer porcelain or to multi-layer zirconia, or I want to check contacts, right? You almost have to have a printer, right? Otherwise I'm outsourcing all that. Now, after that, right, once we decide, okay, I'm going to get a printer so I can print my models, or I want to print something else like night guards, or maybe dentures, or maybe temporary crowns, or maybe surgical guides. So now I'm looking at the printers in a different light, right? Not only will they do this, but will they do that, right? And then how long will it take to do that? And now that I've decided that, I want to ask the printer company, who's going to train me when I get it? Do I just take it out of the box and go on my own, or is somebody going to help me and support me? And then after I'm going, is there somebody I can call, or is there somebody I can ask, or is there a helpline or a help uh, documentation, any kind of tool like that. And then, of course, how much does it cost? So in training, there are multiple opportunities, right? But you got to be trained on your equipment. You got to understand it completely. So you want to have the ins and outs of what it's capable of and how to keep it doing what it's capable of. And you want to know things like, okay, you're going to bring the printer and train me here, or am I going to buy the printer and come to your place for training, or is it going to be virtual? You got to do something that's comfortable for you. Now, most of the manufacturers and distributors offer some sort of training, both live and virtual, depends on the company. And then there's other types of training, like what my firm does, right? I have gone on site, as you can see here, and worked with technicians specifically on the printing workflows and how to handle the machines and all that. But you certainly want after the fact support and service from these training resources, wherever they are, whoever they may be. And so those are important questions to ask. Not only can it print models, but hey, who's going to teach me how to use it, and who can I call when something's not right? Now, you're probably aware that not all printers can print all materials. So again, knowing what you want to do specifically in your lab is critical, right, to determine what type of printer you should be looking at. Is it just models, right? That narrows the list, but it also expands, right, the opportunities within the printers that can do only models and what they might be capable of doing. Can it do both regularly printed models? Can it print model material that's heat resistance for vacuum forming? Can it print soft tissue for implant models? Those kind of things. Can I print surgical guides, right? There's some FDA qualifications there. Night guards, dentures, castable materials. And if you have one, you already know this. If you don't have a printer yet, you've got to be aware that if you don't maintain them well, things don't go well, right? You've got to maintain maintenance regularly. You've got to clean them regularly. You got to calibrate them regularly. And that's not a hard thing to do, but somebody has to be the captain of that ship. Somebody has to say, this is your job. You got to make sure this printer's up and running. And so when we come over and put a tray in it, it prints. Now, there's always going to be misprints. That happens, but you minimize that if you plan on your regular maintenance. If you have that regularly scheduled, I'm going to calibrate it every second day, or every time we change materials, or anytime we do this, we're going to go through the calibration process again. Make it a proactive approach, right? Don't wait until, misprint, I better go calibrate. Be proactive about it, and you'll see less misprints. Now, you also have to figure out what happens when things go south and I can't get it fixed, either through calibration or adjustment or helpline, right? If that printer is down for a period of time, you have to have a plan in place that says, here's what happens, right? Here's what we do, whether that's outsourcing or whether it's my manufacturing or distributor partner zipping me out a loaner printer real quick. You have to have that plan in place and know what that time means. I can remember once we had two printers and they were printing wax-like material for casting, right? So we were still doing a lot of PFMs. And, we were talking about 100 copings a day. And if the printer goes down, which it did, right, that's 100 copings that I can't cast because the printer's not working. And if I don't have the staff at the bench that can hand wax all those copings, then I'm in a mess. And so, we had multiple layers of backup plans, right? Loaner printers, outsourcing partners that we could quickly send the files to. They would print them and get them back to us the next morning, that kind of thing. So you have to have that plan in place. One thing that even I forget to do quite often, there's something, we all know about software updates, but there's firmware updates. The chips in the printers can be updated in most cases. And so you have to be in close contact with your company, right? How do I get those updates and how do I install them? Most of it's pretty easy, but you need to be aware of that. Cleanliness is the key, right? I can assure you that a lot of misprints are caused by simply not cleaning. And if there's any speck of dust or any dirt on these glass plates that the trays sit on, it can cause a printer failure or a print problem. So after the printer, right, let's talk about the challenges. How do we, what are the challenges? Well, if I've got a bunch of technicians that are waxing and dentures and setting teeth, how do I move over to the printed, right? What do I do with those people? And so you have to plan for that. And you want to optimize what you have available to you. And the printing of a denture versus the waxing and investing and processing of a denture is it's just a variance in tool, right? It's not a replacement for people. It just means we're using different tools to get things done. So, and why would I want to have that tool? Well, if I can't find people to do these waxing tasks or set these teeth, then I got to look at alternatives, and printing is a great solution for that. And so that should be your goal, is to, all right, how do I get through the challenges? I can't find people, can't get all the work done. I've got pans backed up. I got people calling every day, says, can you do a denture for me? And I just don't have the staff or, capacity to do it. Printing will really expand your capacity right away by working the digital into it. Now, there is some time involved, right? We got to get people trained. So if got somebody who all they've been doing is waxing dentures their whole time at the lab, clearly, we've got to teach them some dental skills. And that's where your training partners come in, the printer partners, or, whatever resources you can get to help get the folks up to speed on, how do we switch our skill sets from wax spatula over to a 3D printer and a computer. So let's look about some of the solutions, right? Well, the good news is on the materials, there's not a big wall here, right? It's pretty darn easy. And you just have to dial that in. And I'm showing you some of the best, right? And I'm showing you resins here that when I go in labs, and I've been blessed, I've been in over 300 or 400 labs in the last few years, training and helping. And I can tell you that the ones you're looking at here are the ones I see everywhere. And that's not, just arbitrary. If y'all go in 50 labs and I see the key splint beside every printer I see, that tells me something, right? And when I reach out to key splint and I ask them, and oh yeah, and it's usable in multiple printer technologies and all that. And that is one of the most common solutions I've seen for night guards and splints, right? One of the most common restorations out there is a splint. And, if you're not making them through 3D printing, you are missing the boat on saving a ton of time and workflow. This is a really cool material that works really well. We design them, we print them, right? Clean them up and they're done. Very, very cool. So, the loose on digital print, clearly I've been teaching that for 7 years, and it's a pretty awesome denture solution. Asiga, their model material, one of the best out there, right? It's easy to use, very affordable. I just recently started using the rodent denture-based material. Super excited about that. And also doing a little work with the jetted technology with Trusana. So you want to make sure that your materials are validated. And that can mean multiple different things. But the key thing I want to know is, when somebody says, is it validated? Have you printed a number of items in this material in your printer, right? And do you have the results of that? Right? And the validation just means, yes, we printed this, we've tested it, the strength is still there, the accuracy is still there, and so on. So equipment, right? Again, I think I said this a minute ago, got to calibrate it, right? You got to keep it maintained. You got to clean it. And that way, you keep things going well. And then upgrades. I just added the Ultra to my line, and I'm telling you, it's exciting, right? So you use the Max for several years, and then this thing comes along, and it's just cool. So upgrades are a thing. It's a known factor that we're going to always be buying, better computers, faster processing speed, and the same applies in the 3D printers, right? Things are always going to get a little better, and that's a reality of the digital world. When you talk about workflows, and I've been teaching digital denture workflows for quite some time, and the time and cost comparison that I do in my ROI program, we're saving 35 to 50% hands-on time doing a denture digitally than we do analog. And that just means if I can do something faster, right, and I can do more of them in one day, that just increases the top line and the bottom line. So you got to optimize those workflows. It doesn't always mean it's the case. There's sometimes I realize, I just spent so long designing, this I don't know, maybe acrylic partial, and I could have salt and peppered it in about an hour. But sometimes it's better to stick to old school, but not often. Most of the time, the digital workflows really help. I mean, think about it. If I get an intraoral scan for a 3-unit bridge, right, I throw that directly in, to the printer, run the model software, build it, print it, right? And instead of waiting on stone to set up, instead of mixing and all the mess associated with that. So it makes our capacity much better. Plus, I'm going to talk about AI here in a minute. It makes it even faster. You got to be training continually, right? This is my firm is all about that. That's what I do. Is I go out, I go in labs, I go in dental offices, I go to meetings. I work with companies. I work with some of our most popular companies out there to help develop workflows and get your people trained up. So, please reach out to me or anybody when you need that training. I realize it, right? I was very fortunate at our lab. We had a full-time trainer on staff, so we would hire somebody new. That guy was dedicated. He spent all his time specifically training, and he would be hands-on, one-on-one with brand new folks, for several weeks just to get them good and up to speed. And then, he would put them out into the production and start working with them on a periodic basis to make sure they were moving along. That's a very good benefit to have, but an expensive one, right? And, what if you don't have anybody to train? What's that guy do? So our fortune, he helped us with production and with quality control. But you always got to be thinking about training. Where am I going to get it? How am I going to get it? And, I am happy to help you with any of those discussions. All right. So equipment. All right. This is pretty cool. I love, watching all this stuff happen. And, AI, and I'll talk about a couple of different AI companies in a second, but when we can take that intraoral scan from a dentist and we can immediately go to our AI account, and in less than 2 minutes, sometimes the model file is back and ready for printing. Right. And then there's some systems now that are actually loading them into our printer software right away. That's the process of automation. That really helps us. So take a good look at that. That's a pretty inexpensive way to integrate automation into your lab, right? It's just a service. It's just a machine somewhere that's figuring out how to make this model from the scan, sending you back the STL ready to throw a new printer. Very, very awesome. Been working with exocad now after being a 3Shape lifelong user, and I'm super excited, especially about things like their partial denture module. Right, this is a pretty cool advancement. What you're looking at is the cast metal partial workflow within exocad. And what you see is multiple parts and pieces. And what I love about this most is that this workflow is done all in one case design, right? So we set up the case in the beginning. We say, hey, I want to do a cast partial with 2 saddles and teeth. And you design the teeth, you design the saddles, and then you design the framework without ever leaving that one case. Right? That's cool enough on its own. So at the end of the design, you've got the STLs for the teeth, for the saddles, and for the metal framework that you can send to whoever to get the 3D printed. But I think the icing on the cake is the fact that this software actually separates the saddles into 2 pieces that surround the meshwork, the metal framework. So you print those saddles in 2 pieces, with the intaglio part being shown here in red. So those are 2 printed denture-based pieces that are luted together like Lego blocks around the metal mesh of the partial framework. And so this is literally a 100% digital design, including the intaglio saddles. That's something we've not had with any other software before. And I think that's really a great advancement. And then printing. Through my time when I was with Dentsply, I got a great relationship going with the engineers there. And, one of the engineers told me that jetting technology is really where 3D printing is going. We've been using SLA, stereolithography or layered printing for quite some time. And most of the printers out there are that. But the jetting is more efficient and it expands the capabilities, but it's a very challenging mechanics to get the resins that we need and want to go through accurately and with the quality and speed. But Meyerson is leading the way in this right now. I think there is one that's been commercially available for a couple of years, but the dentures, at least coming out of that one, are not high impact. So in my world, it's all about dentures most of the time, and so that was my focus. but it can also print models and everything. This one is really dialing in on the dentures, which is exciting for me. And being a jetted technology, that just frees up lots of things about color and layers. But the biggest part it frees up with labor is that the dentures come out pretty much done, maybe a little polishing. So there's no assembly or parts or pieces, right, you have to worry about. And that's the big win with jetting. So let's talk about some of these trends, some of the other things that I'm seeing. Um, Parts washers, right? Parts washers are pretty interesting to me because we've seen through some of the new 3D printed resins that they can be pretty challenging to get them clean, to get the surface resin off. And if there's technology that can do that for us automatically and efficiently, then that's obviously worth a look at. And I know that Zahn has one that's been successful so far. And I think that's a very viable option that's actually here and available now. But we're just on the front end of it. But what we're seeing that it's working. The next thing that you might see would be, tying some automation together, right? We're starting to see some printers that you load the files and push go, and you walk away and the files are stacked up in a queue, and as it prints and finishes one job, it scrapes off one job and it starts the next job, right? And it scrapes them off in a basket, and then maybe that goes into an automated cleaner, or it sits there and waits until you come clean them. It's pretty impressive technology to have a rotation of jobs without having to have somebody physically there. That means that we can run our printers 24/7. And there's all sorts of various robotics and things going on with that. I've already mentioned the jetted technology. I do think that's up and coming. We're going to see that more and more. We're going to see more and more ceramic loading in these resins. They're all out there now. We have some, and they're all around 50, 55% maybe. So you can call them a ceramic restoration, but it's still 49% plastic. And I see that will change. And eventually somebody's going to figure out, printing zirconia. There's one out there that's doing it, but it's not ideal right now. Metal printing, I think, is becoming more and more the norm. And how cool it is just design a frame, send the file off, and get it back ready to go. Pretty exciting time, right? Material science. I mean, we literally have denture bases that are 3 times stronger than acrylic, right? And so, yeah, why not? We have denture teeth that are 3D printed, but just as durable as any carded tooth we've ever used, right? More so than some cases. We're starting to see and hear the flexibles. I mean, they are so close. There's one out there that I know of, maybe a couple that doesn't have FDA full clearance yet, but there are 3 major players in this flexible printed resin market that are right on the edge of bringing it to bear for us. So we've all been waiting on that for a few years, and that will be exciting. And again, these jetted resins, this is the TrueJet, the Trusana. One of the coolest things about this workflow is that there are no supports there. This thing actually prints the denture within a bed of goop, right? And that goop just washes off, but there's no sprues to disconnect, right? Well, so when it comes out, there's not a lot of handwork. So the automation I mentioned, right? CADflow AI is one of my favorites by far. CADflow AI, very simple, very affordable, and they will send back your model design. He can design a splint, he can design a bleaching tray, some more ortho things in there, and very smart technology, super smart, super accurate, and amazingly quick. So CADflow is something to look at, especially in your model part. But there's some other ones out there. We've all heard of the AI crowns and everything, and there's 2 or 3 of those players in the market today, and they can really help us in the lab, not having to take the time to make some of these simple designs. Let me hit on a few products. And so Asiga, probably one of the most common out there. The Max has been great. Now they have the Max 2 and the Ultra, the Pro 4K for the big boys. Pretty awesome, right? This is kind of one of the most predictable technologies. Show you this quick video on the Ultra because I just put one in just a few weeks ago, and I am loving this printer. There's so many cool things about the printer. There's always been some things that might aggravate you about your technology. And with the Asiga Max, this little small screen that you have to kind of put to go through the menus, right? I'm an old guy and I got arthritis, and finding the menus to work on that plastic screen can sometimes be frustrating. The Ultra got a big screen, glass. The interface is a lot more intuitive, easier to get around. Not having to touch the printer, right? Not getting it sticky, awesome. Not having to crank down the platform, right? It's a electromagnet. It locks it on there by electric magnetism, so it doesn't come off. And the tray holders, right, the clamp down on the tray, much easier. It's just a cleaner, neater, more robust system. And I can't find any flaws with it right now. I'm so thrilled. This is actually sorry, a video clip from a social media post I made the day I put it in. And you go look at on my social media, you can see some of the things I'm talking about, right? The trays with the Sega, they've done a ton of work on these trays, and I really was impressed by. It just felt heftier, more robust, maybe a thicker plastic, and certainly I know the Mylar is a higher grade of Mylar. And so excited about the tray, excited about the Magic opening, and look at the platform size. Look at the Max platform off, and the Ultra. I mean, I can get 10 or 12 dentures on that thing. I think easily 8 to 10, and that's my little lab, and excited about this technology. And this too, I've already said, I am working with these guys over the next 3 months in an advisory role, watching some of the things they're doing. I'm looking at the end product and giving them my opinion about process, shades, all those things. But first glance, guys, if you're thinking about jetted technology, if you're thinking about printing a monolithic, if you're thinking about less hands-on time, right, just design it or get it outsourced designed and throw it in the printer and print it, right? No supports to cut off or break off. The cleaning process is super simple from what I can see so far. So I'm excited about this. More to come. I am working with them again to do the evaluation and get an opinion. But right now, I'm pretty excited about it. I think a monolithic is certainly a viable option, and depending on the capacity of your lab, this printer can be a pretty good choice. And it's got the backing of Meyerson, been around for a long time. These guys know denture, teeth, and materials as good as anybody. And of course, with the Zahn partner, they can't go wrong. So, check with your Zahn folks. That are, I don't know, 3 or 4 beta labs been printing with this thing for quite some time and having, really good results, but they're still dialing it in. I think you're going to hear a big rollout, in Chicago, but exciting stuff. I think everybody knows that I've been with the Lucitone since the beginning, and left Dentsply just, first of the summer to do this training gig. But I'm still a fan, still an advocate. I still, present and train for Dentsply on the Lucitone, and absolutely fan. I think it's at the top or near the top of all the denture-based materials and tooth materials out there. Failure rate has been nil, and it's not I've trained hundreds of labs. It's not a new product anymore. The Dentsply data tells us that we're at around a million arches of Lucitone digital print. So it's not new, it's proven, it's working. And I think it'll be here for a long time. Keystone, I mentioned them earlier. I see this stuff everywhere I go. I mean, everywhere. Every printer I look at, there's a bottle of Keystone, Key Splint Soft, Key Splint Clear. I think they're night guards. I think they're just head and shoulders above everybody else. And now that it prints really clear, and you combine that with some of the things like the gloss trays in the Asiga printer, that really minimizes the polish time. Shoot, it's great. I've been watching denture bases all along, and it's up until recently, the Lucitone product was kind of a standalone thing as far as strength and aesthetics, but that's changing. And I told this several years ago that other people are going to catch up. And this denture here, this set you see here, I just printed these recently out of their new denture base 2.0. And the teeth, I used their Titan for this case, just to see how it would work for a denture tooth, more used for, a fixed or maybe an implant case because it's so strong. But God, I'm thrilled. This stuff was pretty exciting. Looks good, feels good. I don't know exactly the fracture resistance compared to some of the others, but it feels to me, every bit as strong as the Lucitone. They also sent me this other kit, this palette naturalizing kit. And this was a kit that I'm using for those cases where we're printing that monolithic prototype or try-in, whether it be a denture or an implant prototype, and you need to make it pink, right? And there's lots of materials out there, more and more coming every day, but this kit is actually well put together. You can see in my palette there, I've put, maybe 3 or 4 different shades or variances of pinks and purples. And, I'm customizing the tissue with a simple brush. And so we, going back to our artistic roots, and I'm not that great, but I can make it pink now pretty quick with this stuff. And it's just like cured. So pretty exciting. The other material that I use for pink, and this is the easy of easy, all right? It's named Easy Gum for a reason, in my opinion. This is literally a stick of pink stuff. Reminds me a little bit of the old Triad material, but it's not near as sticky and it looks better. It's simply, your fingers are your best tool here. Mash it on, push it down in the papillas, and then carve around the gingiva, clean it up, and like cure it. They also have some modifiers, some of those dark pinks and reds and purples that I use underneath this to kind of customize it, maybe have a little deeper look. There's several training videos on the Harvest website about this stuff, and it's taking off. So if you want easy, right, this one is easy. Harvest has something else that I use in my 3D printing a lot, and that's called the Innova Print Wash. It is a different solvent. It is a solvent that cleans parts really, really well. It cleans Lucitone digital print better than IPA. So it's a little bit more expensive than IPA, but you can use it multiple times. It even looks dirty and it still works really well. So Innova Print Wash, you can check that out on their website, or you can check it out with Zon. So I might have went a little too quick, but I wanted to leave time for the Q&A session.
First, Jimmy,
And
we can go
I'll
over the
let
polls if you
Zon
would
tell
like.
me how to handle that.
I'll help you with the Q&A for sure. But
Cool.
do you want to go over the polls right now to see how
Yeah,
everybody
yeah, that'd
answered?
be good. That'd be good.
Okay, so for the first one, it seems that how many 3D printers are currently in their labs? The most was 2 to 4, and that's 50% of our attendees. The next was one printer, 29%. Then 14% have 0 at this point, and 7% have 5 or more. I don't know if you have any.
No, that's about normal, but I'm excited there's a mix, attending today because, the people have, 2 to 4 have obviously heard and seen and experienced a lot of things I talked about. But, that number of folks here that don't have one, so obviously they're thinking, and how do I make that decision? Then clearly I think we were right on track with what we were offering as far as content. So
Excellent. The next one is, what are you using your 3D printers for mostly? 58% are using them for models, and 42% are using them for dentures and partials. It doesn't seem like anyone's using it for splints or night guards, surgical guides, or the crown and bridge.
oh, wow, that surprised me. I thought splints would be number 2 because I see that stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully that should encourage those of you that are out there that answered that poll that you ought to really look at the splint material, because the workflow is so much better. I mean, the splint material print is great, right? And we use the ultra gloss trays and they come out already polished, and that's great. But the biggest win is the time. The amount of time that you're going to spend on night guards is going to go way down drastically.
Okay, so training and support, what are their greatest training or support needs right now? It seems that 33% are looking for help in analog dentures and partials. 22% are looking for the digital workflow, whether it be milling or printing. 33% are looking for sales and marketing. And 11% of our attendees are looking for production systems and management.
Cool. That's not a surprise. And again, reach out for that help. I'm certainly available to help you with any of those things. But
So I do
Go.
have a couple of open questions. So if anybody has any more questions, please type them in at this time. We'll go into the Q&A section. And Jimmy, Mike wants to know, do you use a 3D printer enclosure for your 3D printers? If so, what do you use?
I do not. And it's interesting that I asked because I was just looking at one the other day. My buddy Min Tra has one he got off of Amazon, and it's almost a fabric tent with a zipper door. And he said it massively reduced the fumes in his little lab. Now, my lab, it's actually in my dentist, my personal dentist had he wanted to add a small lab in the back. He has a son that's coming out of residency and very digitally oriented, and so he wanted to create a space. And so he asked for my input on layout and design and whatnot. And at the end of the day, it ended up being kind of a partnership. And now I have a key, and that's kind of where I go to do my thing. And added the printers in there, so we're fully capable. And but we plan for it, right? So we put an exhaust fan, just a simple kitchen bathroom exhaust fan, in the printer area, and it does a fantastic job. I mean, when I go in there, I don't smell it. So, but I think that if you're in a small place and you don't have the capability of an exhaust fan or adequate ventilation, then adding that little enclosure is absolutely beneficial.
And I also know that Quattro has, a full line of exhaust and vacuum that they can ask their Zon representative to give them some insight on too. So Michael wants to know, he's having a couple of issues with their print separating from the built plate with proper supports.
Right.
What could cause that?
So there's some settings in most printers, and the number one setting you want to look at in cases like that is the Asiga calls it contact width, right? And it's where the support from the platform to your part, right? And so we'll do it this way because it's your platform's up here and your support is here and your part is here. That point where your support touches your part is called the contact width. And we found with the dentures especially, and denture tooth segments, that 0.3 is 0.3 millimeters is the normal default, but that's not enough. So we bumped that up to 0.4, even 0.5, and that reduced a number of it. The other thing you want to look at is that most CAM softwares that run these printers have the ability to print a layer of resin first before it starts printing the supports and the parts. And if you add that layer at about 2/10 or 3/10 thickness, and you make it solid instead of mesh, that will also enhance that, keeping everything connected well and not distorting. Now, in the Asiga line, there's some settings in print jobs. It's called fast print mode and separation detect. And some resins, you really can't check the separation detect, and we want to check it because it makes the print job go faster. But if you do check it, you gain speed. But in some resins, it also exacerbates the problem of misprints. For example, the Max, the UV Max line, you can't check the separation detect when you're printing loose-tone digital print base because you will have more problems. But with the Ultra, because of the lighting and the heating in the Ultra, that is now allowed. So in fact, the Ultra is now the fastest printer of loose-tone digital print on the market. I just printed a base plate of 8 bases the other day, and it was just under 2 hours. And I've not printed anything that fast on any printer for loose-tone digital print. So that was pretty exciting. But yeah, that platform or that plate that you print before the print support start, that should eliminate that.
So Michael also wants to know that the lab is not having success with Keystone Soft Clear Splint. After they place it into the alcohol bath and they come out, they're foggy and not clear. So they need to know exactly how to clean them.
Yeah, that's a question for Keystone or a technical rep from them. I'm not aware of that, and I've only heard that occasionally. Um, most people that use the Ultra Gloss tray seem to be pretty happy with that, but I kind of get where you're coming from because I actually tried to print dentures in the using the ultra gloss tray, and they came out of the printer looking really good. But when I put them in the alcohol bath to wash off the surface resin, it lost most of the shine there, and I had to go do the normal workflow again. So it's probably something like that. Um, but I'd also want to look at the time. You know, how long is it in the IPA? Sometimes we put it in longer than it really needs to. But that's really a question for the Keystone folks.
And the next question that we have is, how long should a print take for a bite splint?
Um, I would think that that's 45 minutes in like the max. The Ultra, I haven't printed one yet, but I'm hoping that it'll be between 30 and 45 minutes.
Okay, so you can keep those questions coming for Jimmy. We'd love to hear them. I just want to let you all know what's happening up next on Zahn Academy. On October 23rd, we have A to Z Milling Solutions featuring Aman Gorbach Mills and the rest of their portfolio. October 29th, we have end of year planning for purchasing lab equipment, and that's with Henry Schein Financial Services. They'll be speaking to you a little bit about what to do with Section 179. And October 30th, we have Clash of the Cams with Dan Morano, CDT, and he'll be speaking to you about why can't you have both Millbox and Hyperdent. So that's pretty exciting. Zahn Roadshows and Showcases, they're coming to a town near you, and October 18th, which is next week, will be in St. Louis, Missouri, and we'd love to have you if you're in the area, would like to travel to beautiful St. Louis. And on November 15th, we'll be in Houston, Texas. So again, join us for a great day of learning with your peers and with industry experts. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, and oh, we do have another question, Jimmy, so hold on just 1 second.
All right.
How often do you calibrate your printer?
So with the Asiga line, calibration is pretty easy. Zero calibration only takes a couple of minutes. So I do it anytime I start a new print job with a different material than I just printed. If I'm printing the same material consistently, then I do it once per week.
Okay, awesome. If anybody has any other questions for Jimmy, I just want to thank you so much for joining us and spending the time, Jimmy, to give your expertise to our customers here at Zahn. And for our Zahn attendees today, thank you so much for joining us and, trusting us with your education. It means the world. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. And we look forward to seeing you on October 23rd with our next education piece. Thank you all so much.